Hi, I'm Quentin Schultz, co-author of the book An Essential Guide to Interpersonal Communication. An Essential Guide to Interpersonal Communication. It's all about communicating well with other people in the age of social media. And my co-author, Diane Badzinski, and I produced these videos, wrote the book in order to help you communicate both more effectively and more richly with greater rewards and happiness in your everyday life, whether it's at church, whether it's at home, whether it's in your neighborhood, at work, and the like. So interpersonal, person-to-person communication is what the book is about. And looking at it in the context of today's high-tech, multimedia, social media world. And now I'm going to look at just a little bit of what's in Chapter 5 under the chapter title, Relate Openly. Relate openly. Open yourself up. That's the key here in Chapter 5. It's not something that we do automatically. If you looked at earlier videos, read this up to this point in the book, you know that there are reasons why we don't do this. But we have to if we want deep, healthy, good relationships. So let's jump right in here on relating openly. There is a kind of joy to not doing it, really, when you think about it. It's the joy of, hiding. The joy of putting a mask on. Why not protect ourselves? Protect ourselves. Don't let people know what's going on inside of us. And elevate our external image, what other people think of us, by hiding from others our true thoughts and feelings. This is the joy, in quotes, of masks. We can protect ourselves. We can create a better image of ourselves than what's really going on inside. For instance, we might create the impression that we're great people of faith and have strong faith, but at night, in the dark, when we're lying in bed, we have doubts. Or we might give the impression that we have a terrific marriage, and in fact, on the home front, it's not a terrific marriage. Or that things are going wonderfully in our relationship with our children or our grandchildren, and in fact, they're not. So we fail to open up in ways with people so that they can be part of a relationship with us and help us and listen to us and encourage us. But then also, we do various things to make ourselves look better, one of which is to lie or fib. And so I'm going to talk about that in this chapter video as well. We, in some sense, are all actors on the stage of life. I know I took that from Shakespeare, and he probably took it from somebody else, but we all live on the stage of life, and we're dealing with masks. You and I, living under the shadow of the fall from grace, we do a lot of this. So the joy of masks is also the problem of masks. Now, the good news here is that transparent relationships, that is, relationships in which we're open and others are open with us, we open up, we're transparent. These create intimacy. Intimacy. I'm not talking here necessarily about sexual or physical intimacy. I'm talking about emotional intimacy. And when we as human beings start to move into adolescence, and teenage years, we really start wondering about how to do this. How do you create intimacy with other people? And it's not easy, because you can be rejected, or you can offer too much intimacy to people and they can be critical, or they can gossip about you. It's difficult, and we suffer with this difficulty our whole lives. So the benefit of creating intimacy with relationships that are transparent also has a kind of downside to it. How many people know your inner thoughts and feelings well? In other words, how many people are you really in intimate emotional relationship with? Well, if you have a fair number of these, your life is richer and more rewarding. And if you have a transparent relationship with God, in that interpersonal relationship, your life is better off. But what will you not share, even with your closest friends? What will you not share? Those may be the things that are dogging you the most, that are interfering with your relationship with God, other people, and yourself. What about those? Are you willing to open up about those appropriately to the right people? Maybe it's with professional help, possibly with a pastor. I have a psychiatrist. I also have a counselor. I have had for many years with certain things that I'm not quite ready to open up with other people about, that I need some help with them to get to the point to do that. And I think that's a healthy thing. But we need transparent relationships to create intimacy. Lying to others. So we get into lying. Now, lying is very technical here, so stick with me a little bit on this. A lie is a statement intended to deceive. A statement intended to deceive. It requires both words and intentionality or intentional deception. So we use words, whether we write or whether we speak, in text. Well, we use words to intentionally deceive someone. That's a lie. Okay? That's a lie. Now here's a question for you. It's a difficult one about transparency in interpersonal relationships. Is it a lie to say that we are fine when we aren't? So somebody asks us in the narthex at church, or somebody at work, or maybe even a spouse, a child asks us, "How are you doing?" And we say, "Fine." Isn't that a great cover-up? Fine. It's not the same as great. Of course, great might be a lie too, but what about fine? What about I've seen better days? What do we do with that? I'm using this just as an example about the difficulty of thinking about lying and thinking about it in the context of trying to create deeper transparency for better relationships with God, others, and ourselves. One of the things that's true of all of us is there are things that we hide or think we can hide from God. We don't talk to God about them, often because we feel so much shame, guilt. We just ignore it. And so that greatly interferes with our relationship with God, with less transparency with God. Lying is an issue. 10 Reasons We Lie. In the book, Diane Badzinski, my co-author, and I have a lot of charts and different lists of practical things to do to improve our interpersonal communication. And with each of these videos, I like to pull one of those out and just go over them with you because I find that particularly interesting. So 10 Reasons We Lie: to protect our pride. Number 2, to hide our destructive actions. That is, we don't want others to know about our own destruction, including our destructive communication. 3, to save face. 4, to circumvent punishment. I find this as a college teacher over the years that this is one of the reasons that my students told me they most lied when they were in high school. They didn't want to get punished. Okay. Number 5, to retain control. 6, to exploit others. Lie to them to get something from them, to use them, to manipulate them. Number 7, to avoid admitting our failure. Isn't that something? We don't want others to know that we failed at something, even though sometimes failure is most important for improvement. I have a new book on teaching in Christian higher education, and one of the things I talk about there is how my failures as a teacher most helped me learn to be a better teacher. And when I do workshops at different colleges and universities, that's one of the things that people tell me they're so glad I shared, because they don't feel safe sharing their failures with their colleagues. Number 8, maintain relational harmony. Number 9, to spare others from expressing their feelings. 10, to prevent harm or embarrassment to others and self. 10 reasons we lie. And all of these keep us from becoming more intimate, with more transparency with other people. Now, I'm not saying there's never a good reason to lie. That's a complicated situation. And if you're interested in that, you can take a look at one of my other books, Communicating with Grace and Virtue, where I go into that in some depth. But I am saying that we have to be careful that we don't lie too easily when it's not really necessary or helpful, and that it gets us into trouble and lowers the quality of our relationships. So think about that, and keep your lies, your lying, your intentional deception out of control. And with people who say things to you or text you or whatever where they're not intending to lie, they think something is true and then find out it's not, give them a lot of slack. If they say, oh, I lied to you, no, they didn't. Say, you didn't lie to me. You didn't know any better. That helps with relationships. The thing is that lying in its different forms destroys trust. The greater the distrust in our relationships, the weaker the love of God, others, and self. We need trust. Whom do you really trust? And is it mutual? The best interpersonal relationships that we have are those where there's a high level of trust, very high, and we can share almost anything and empathize and sympathize and forgive and move ahead and understand that if we share a time we lied, we all do it and we forgive and we move ahead. But we need such people in our lives. And if you don't have any relationships that are transparent enough to overcome lying, then I encourage you to work on them. You can do it. Open up bit by bit. But can we trust others enough to be transparent? What do you think about that? Can we trust others enough to be transparent? I think we can, even if it doesn't come easy. But here's the thing, not everyone is trustworthy. Okay? Are we trustworthy? Ask ourselves that as we get to know ourselves too. So we have to, in developing intimate relationships with a lot of transparency, we have to learn who we can trust and who we cannot trust. And then gradually open up, gradually become more transparent with those that we are learning that we can trust. And then, if someone turns on us, if they start to gossip, if they take advantage of us because we've been transparent with them about something, we can go to them and say, hey, I think you wronged us on this, and see what happens. But it also might be that they are not the kind of person at their stage in life right then that we can be transparent with and trust them. Trust is always on the edge. It takes a while to gain it, and you can lose it quickly. If you don't believe me, just think about people in government. Think about government today. Think about the media, the press, institutions, and the low level of trust, because we all know of experiences now where they have lied to us. And so we wonder if we should trust them at all. So we grow in trust gradually, being more transparent and picking our friends carefully. You can do this, and it will be great in your life. So, chapter 5 is all about relating openly. We need to do it. You know, when I was in high school, I lived in such a difficult situation at home with my schizophrenic mother. We had almost no money. I was embarrassed about living in this trailer and had almost no clothes to wear, and I never went to a single social event in high school. Not a single one. I was so embarrassed about my life and so unwilling to open up and let people know how fearful I was and what was going on in my life. I didn't have any close friends. And I went to the university and I met some people and they were Christians. And they were wonderful people and they shared the gospel with me. And I became a deep follower of Jesus Christ. I've been following Jesus ever since that time, by the grace of God. What a thing. And it helped me knowing how much God loves me and God accepts me to continue to open up with others, be transparent. And so I began being transparent in my life and eventually with my students in classes and in a fitting way to build relationships by relating openly to people and avoiding lying of all kinds, except in some situations to protect other people. So when I got the Alumni Award to go back to high school as a distinguished alumnus not that many years ago, it was kind of funny. I was having lunch with the principal of the school and she said to me, "Well, what were you involved in when you were a student here?" I said, "Nothing." And she looked at me. "I'm getting the Alumni Award." I said, "Nothing." I said, I lived in a trailer. I was what we used to call white trailer trash, living with a schizophrenic mother who could never drive a car, and I had very few clothes. I couldn't make the social standards. She was aghast, didn't know what to make of it. And then later in the day, they had me meet with the most troubled students in that high school with a social worker. And the social worker asked me in front of these other students, some of whom wouldn't look at me even face to face. They were so troubled. She said, "Well, how were you successful? What can you share with our students here?" And I said, "I started following Jesus Christ, God." And wow, she was kind of shocked by that, public school. And I said, "Yeah, that changed my life, because when I realized that God loved me and I could open up to God, I began opening up to other people." And then I talked a little bit about what I'd grown up with my alcoholic father and schizophrenic mother and all. And when I finished, everybody was leaving, and a student came up to me and said, "I'm so glad you shared that." He said, "That's what I'm living in now. Very similar." I said, ask God to be with you. Ask Jesus to be with you and move ahead. Find other people who believe in God to move with you. I was so glad to be able to share that. Relating openly is a critical part of our interpersonal communication. Do it to build your relationship with God, with other people, and with yourself. And you will be a blessing to others by doing that. This is from the book that Diane Badzinski and I wrote called An Essential Guide to Interpersonal Communication. Please pick up a copy of the book, and I think you'll be blessed by it. And look at the other videos we have here as well. Thank you so much.